This is Nadia from the Relativity Podcast, and you're listening to Discussing Comics.
Hello there, this is Olivia from Oz9 Podcast. I like to listen to people talk about things. So here's a really good network for people talking about things. It's actually called the Discussing Network because it's people talking about things. Enjoy!
Welcome back, everyone. This is Discussing Comics. I am Kyle Jones, and I am happy to welcome back. And you know what? I'm not going to continue calling you a guest co-host. I'm just going to say welcome to someone who's become part of the Discussing Comics team and who is also the host of the Extremely Geeked Out podcast, Ron Stevens. Ron, how are you?
I'm doing quite well, man. How are you doing?
I am very excited to have you on here. I guess that would be a good word. Maybe, like powerfully excited, housely excited, or whatever.
Yeah, man. Dude, I am so excited to talk about what we're about to talk about right now. This is a really fun read, man.
So for everyone listening, if you haven't already figured out what we are talking about on this episode, we will be covering the first two issues of House of X, and we will also discussing Powers of 10. This is the new miniseries or dual miniseries by Jonathan Hickman as the writer, with several artists, fantastic artists that are also assisting with the creation duties of this. This is from Marvel. This is X-Men. So if you have not seen these books, you've not read them, put us on pause. Go out, either buy the books, buy them digitally. Come back after you've read them, because from this moment forward, spoilers.
Spoilers. Affirmative. Spoilers. Spoilers. Affirmative. Spoilers.
Yes, spoilers have gone out. So, Ron, initial thoughts. What do you think?
I don't know how to say this without sounding like a complete bias about Jonathan Hickman, but because he's like one of my favorite writers. And, as a comic book reader, of course, we like good, quick reads, but I really, really, really enjoy a good slow read. I like how Jonathan Hickman writes a slow read, how he puts you in this joyride that is his stories, and how he just navigates you through every book, each issue. This is what this is at his best. This is Hickman at his finest right now. How he is just navigating you through House and through Powers. And it's, we're only 2 issues in for House, and I believe Powers comes out this Wednesday coming. It's awesome read, man. And also, Larez, who's the artist of this book, does beautifully, which he was part of the Young Guns.
Yes, I thought
sketchbook.
So. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Which I don't know why I didn't mention it in my previous episode, my other episode, which you guys should definitely check out. The latest episode of Extremely Geeked Out. Who's your favorite comic book artist? He's really good, man. Really good art. And it fits Jonathan Hickman's style of writing.
I think I agree with you 1,000,000%. I think I made a comment in your episode that you just talked about who's your favorite comic book artist. I think I made the comment of it could take me out of the story if the art is not good. Luckily, the art on this story is brilliant. It is clean. It's well drawn. You can see emotion. I'm just freaking loving reading this.
Yes, this is a fun read from first page to the last. It's awesome.
So I have a question. I know you're a big Spider-Man fan, but refresh my memory. Where did the X-Men rank on your likability meter as far as comic books go?
I was more so growing up. I was more so of a fan of the TV series. I didn't really have that much X-Men comic book exposure, not until I got much older. But there's not that many good X-Men stories, in my opinion, that really comes to mind. I mean, of course, there's Days of Future Past, the Phoenix Saga, and one recent one to memory was Messiah Complex.
Okay.
Those stories right there were what really that I actually enjoyed. Other than that, there wasn't that much that really that kept me around to watch or to read. I tried reading All New X-Men. It was good for a while. The first arc was good, but after that, I lost interest in it, and it just never really stuck with me. Of course, like I said, Jonathan Hickman, I will read anything he will do. I definitely will try anything he does, and usually I'll always really like it. And so when I heard he was doing an X-Men story, I was like, okay, I'll try it out. I'll see what happens. See where it goes. And sure enough, House of X, number 1, I'm locked in. I think I've read issue 1 a good 2 or 3 times since it came out. And I have House of X 2 right now open up, just looking at it. This is probably like my 3rd time opening this book. This is really, really good. And to me, it's really up there in far as best X-Men story.
Okay. For me and the X-Men, I've had a very, and using that word again, interesting association with the X-Men over the years. There was a time whenever I was a little kid that I really didn't read X-Men, and then I got hooked on around, say, 175, 176, early 180s. And then, like X-Men became the last thing I read. It was the book to where I wanted it totally quiet. I didn't want to be disturbed. I was reading Uncanny X-Men because that was the last thing. It was the most important thing I read. And honestly, for the last, say, 10, maybe even 15 years, I would buy X-Men simply because, hey, I'd bought X-Men. But there would be some weeks that I would say, oops, forgot to read X-Men this week, because the stories were so, I don't know, they just didn't have any heart to them. Mm-hmm. But that being said, everything that Jonathan Hickman has written has never let me down. I mean, I loved his writing style from Fantastic Four. I loved the long arc, as you were saying, that big story that weaves these things together, and you have this big payoff at the end. I totally loved how he did that with the Avengers. And I don't mind reading a good story for 2 or 3 years and then getting whatever the resolution is. If that be the case, as long as it's a good resolution, hey, I'm on board. Just in these 3 issues, it's so Jonathan Hickman, and it's so fun to be anticipating an X-Men comic book.
It is. I can't believe I'm saying someone who's not that much of a X-Men fan. Yeah, I'm really excited to read an X-Men book right now. Hickman is he is redefining the X-Men in the comic book universe now.
So let me ask you a question. You said that you were not that big of an X-Men fan, and there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But my curious question to you is, what made them not appeal to you as, say, the Avengers or Spider-Man as a singular character? What made them, because there's a reason I'm asking this question, but what made them not be as interesting to you?
To me, the storyline or the timeline, or I guess you could say the storyline of the X-Men or history of X-Men is very convoluted. It has a lot of going back in time, going to different realities and bringing back certain other characters that may have died in that one reality, but they brought them back and, brought one from another reality for this, for that reality. It was really hard for me to keep up. So it made me lose interest in it. That's the best way I can to really explain that, is that a lot of other stories came out, especially in the 90s. You had so many X-Men stories that came out in the 90s and up, and this trickled down up into now, because you had X-Force, X-Factor,
Excalibur, X-Men, Uncanny X-Men. Well, you had Cable, you had Wolverine, you had
Deadpool.
Yeah. So you had all of those in the, yeah. And then, of course, the 90s. The reason I ask you that question, and I have one more before I tell you why, and this will be an easy question to answer. About how long have you been reading comics?
I would say about 10 plus years.
Okay. So your 10 plus years equal probably the same amount of time that I would describe as my falling out of grace per se, or falling out of interest with the X-Men. So that I find that very, very interesting. And, to comment on your comment about the different characters coming in and going, you did this big thing of the death of Wolverine, which of course we knew Wolverine would be back at some point. But as soon as you do the death of Wolverine, you already have his cloned daughter out there for weapon, X-23. You've got old man Logan that you bring in and actually have him join the X-Men. And then you have the ultimate version of Wolverine's son who moves to Earth 616. So you really weren't without characters with claws in their hands while he was dead.
That is true. Yeah.
And look at Cable for that matter. Cable has died left, right, and center. You had Nightcrawler die. The only person to me who I feel like it's okay for that person to die and come back is Jean Grey. She's done it for so many times. It's almost like, hey, that's part of her character is death and rebirth.
Yeah, because she's so well connected with the Phoenix. That makes sense for her. If you had a resurrector, that would make sense because of the limitless power of the Phoenix. So yeah, for her, that she has really the only one excuse for her to actually constantly come back. Because I think now Nightcrawler is back.
Yes, he is. Indeed, he is. So they actually went to heaven. I'm not joking, to get Nightcrawler.
That's it.
Yeah. So, not to disrespect any of the writers who wrote recently, but what we're here to talk about is they are putting all of that behind them, all of that stuff that we just said we didn't like. And now Hickman has picked up with Powers and House of X. So let's get into House of X number 1. Yes. We see Krakoa, the living island, so to speak, has now become a new island nation. So just off the top of your head, House of X number 1, where we see this new status quo of the X-Men, was there anything that stood out to you as either interesting or odd or both? And what were they?
What I found interesting was just the whole premise of it. It was just the whole idea that now the X-Men are basically this sovereign country. I found that very interesting. What I found odd, it was, I guess I was trying to get my head around as far as Xavier getting to where he is now.
Okay, so I may be able to help you there. So tell me, where were you, where was the, I don't want to say confusion, but the question of what was the exact question of how did he get? So where did you put Xavier in your wondering of how he got there? So where was he in that wondering how he got there?
Well, I guess you could say I think it was maybe the second or third issue but page where Xavier is at Krakoa and Scott and Jean that came out of those pods.
Yes.
That panel? Yeah. Yes. It was that part. And and when that happened, I was like, okay, how did it get to this point? Really? I guess maybe I should have read an issue or two before reading House of X 101.
No, absolutely. You didn't need to, because that to me was very, very weird. And well, let me ask you this. Do you find anything odd about Xavier?
He seems younger?
Yeah. Well, he is younger, and I'll tell you why. There is a character called Phantom X, and in a recent storyline in Astonishing X-Men, the way they brought Xavier, again, another character, back from the dead, was that the Shadow King had Xavier held captive on the astral plane. And Phantom X gave up his body so that Xavier could go and inhabit his body. So the body that he's in is actually not his own body. And afterwards, he was younger and he was calling himself X now. So I'm assuming this younger body that we see is this younger Phantom X body.
Okay. All right.
But here's something else that I want to ask you about. The helmet, the Cerebro helmet. There have been a lot of people on the internet who have made comparison to the Maker, who is also the ultimate version of Reed Richards, wore a very similar helmet. Ironically enough, that storyline was also written by Hickman.
They do. Wow, I did not. Wow, okay, yeah. Maker does strongly remind me of Professor X or X right now in House of X. They are very similar as far as their appearances. I mean, granted, Xavier's helmet is this, it's that big sphere, and Maker's is that long, almost call it that xenomorph-like helmet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that does, oddly enough, yeah. Maybe he's making him seem, I guess, more like him, I guess. Maybe. Which is kind of scary, almost, because I don't trust Maker for anything, really.
No, I don't either. And the thing that I just found weird in this episode or this issue was I found it really weird that Jean is back in a costume that she's not worn since the 70s.
Yeah.
And, she's in that costume, and then yes, the gloves are different, so it is a little more contemporary, but it's still that costume. And you've got the pods that you mentioned. My thing with Krakoa is Krakoa always fed off of mutants. That was the story that we were told is the reason that the X-Men were originally kidnapped and on Krakoa was because he was feeding off of them. So now they're living there. I need more explanation,
Right.
What did you think as the most interesting of this particular issue?
That Xavier and Magneto are on the same page. That's something that I've never seen before in X-Men, in any kind of X-Men story. They're usually always on opposite sides. And for them to be now to actually see the same ideology views for their kind, it's interesting and not expected at the same time.
I give you that. Anything else that caught your attention?
Trying to remember the name of the group that's called, it's with Shield, AIM.
Yes.
Hydra.
I can't remember the group's name, but it was basically all these different subsets, like you said, Shield, AIM, Hydra, Alpha Flight, all of that are once again coming to take down the mutants.
Yeah, I'm really interested in seeing what is to come of that. Because, granted, that was the only time we got to see him was in the first issue, so I'm pretty sure maybe issue 3 they might go back to that. It's just but that's the typical thing about in X-Men stories, that is the humans really, in a sense, are viewed as the villains. But of course, it's this right here just proves that, I don't know, that humans and mutants probably will never get this, probably won't see eye to eye, is that humans will always see mutants as a living threat, and mutants only see humans as being prejudiced, being fearful, I guess you could say, of mutants as well. But that's always been the premise about X-Men stories, and so to have that element of them being in there, I think it's very, very fitting for it.
What I find really interesting is, and you're 100% correct, but what I find really interesting about this is, for the first time, this is not the first time that we've tried an island nation. We've had Genosha before with Magneto. We've had Utopia before with, Scott. But both times you've tried to have your own island nation, both times it's been, here, this is for mutants, you just stay away. But Hickman, in brilliant writing, comes up with this idea, okay, they're on Krakoa, so if they're going to be a nation, they need to have an export. What better type of export than giving humans medication that only works on humans, but will give you either a super great antibiotic, a vitamin basically that will extend your life 5 years if you take it, or something that will help clear up mental dementia or, mental problems with the mind. What do you think of the idea of having an export and that particular export itself?
It gives them ground this time. It just gives them more ground. As you said, I forgot about Genosha when you mentioned that with Magneto. I don't think they really had anything they didn't have anything for the humans to need the mutants. Now they do. Now they have something that the humans really want, or really, in a sense, need. I mean, who wouldn't want to have, a clean bill of health just by taking one pill and not have to worry about it, or have a longer lifespan?
Or better yet, who would not want to have, who has had a loved one who has a mental, like, let's take Alzheimer's. You take that, and that is such a debilitating disease to watch happen. And you've got this medication that would basically cure it. Yeah. Yeah. And the only thing they're asking is you recognize us as a race, as autonomous, and leave us alone.
That's it.
I'm not going to get too much into powers, number one, because while it did leave us with some new characters, we don't really know that much about those characters. And I think the more juicy tidbits we have to talk about is in House number 2. So are you good with skipping powers at this time?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Cool. House of X number 2. And I would say I would be good, easy, and confident in saying one of these episodes or issues that you will say will rock X-Men history. And I think it totally rocked X-Men history. So my friend, do you want to have the honor of saying what rocked X-Men history in this particular issue?
Yeah, I can go ahead and drop the bomb on that one. Well, we find out that longtime X-Men character Moira McTaggart is a mutant.
Bum, bum, bum.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I can't believe it. She's a mutant.
She is a mutant. She's one of them.
Becca, she's a mutant.
Never would have thought of that. And you know what? The first couple of pages, I was like, this is the first time I actually questioned Jonathan Hickman in his writing. And like the first couple of pages I was reading, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what is this? What does this have to do anything with the story? But then it went back to the first issue where Xavier and who you didn't know at first was the younger Moira talking with one another. And she tells her to read his mind, and he finds out, oh, okay, I know he is. And now we're trying to figure out who this girl is, and now we know she's a mutant. And her mutant ability is, some people will say it's a gift, but she said it her best. It's a curse. Yeah. Like, you live a life and you come back with all the memories you have from the previous life, and really don't have no way to correct it because you're technically a whole different person for this new life. It sucks. The power sucks. But.
So I wish that I could have had a cartoon while I was reading this book to have narrated my emotional brain response in a cartoon format while I was reading it, because picture this brain, and as the pages digitally flip, this brain in its cartoon fashion starts like totally melting, because that's how it felt like my brain did. Because think about it. I have been reading X-Men since the 80s. This is 30 something years that I've been reading about Moira McTaggart, and I'm sitting there going, oh my God, she's a mutant. And the beauty of this is he didn't interject a character that we've never heard of and said, oh, well, guess what? There's been an X-Man that you don't know about, you didn't know about, but they've been there all along. And this character was totally erased from the readers and from the character's mind. But this character's been there all along. No, what you did was you took a character who had been there all along and explained it in a way to where it did not negate anything that you read, but made everything that you read mean something different.
Exactly.
And that's beautifully, brilliantly done.
Because he could have used "Forget Me Not" for this. This,
exactly. Exactly. So I want to make a hypothesis here, and I'm going to lay out my facts here, but I'm going to say that Jonathan Hickman is a big Doctor Who fan. You want to know why?
Why you say that?
Because when Jonathan Hickman was writing Fantastic Four, they were working on a base, and Valeria was the one that designed the base that they were that they were going into. And she makes a comment that she got the idea from watching Doctor Who. The place that they're at now is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. So that is my exhibit number 1, that Jonathan Hickman is a Doctor Who fan. My second piece of evidence, so to speak, is going to be the fact that originally it was thought that the Doctor could have as many as 12 lives, basically 13 incarnations. He would regenerate 12 times. And that is typical for a Time Lord. That being said, while not 12, it is said in story that Moria will probably have definitely 10 and maybe 11 lives. And she's not a different person each time per se. She keeps her memories each time she reincarnates, just as the Doctor keeps his memories each time he regenerates. So I'm thinking Hickman has to be a Doctor Who fan.
Doctor Who fan.
At least I'm going to believe that, even if he's not. So let's kind of go through the lives of Moria MacTaggert for a moment. So we see the first one, and that's when my brain started kind of itching a little bit, because I'm reading these first couple of pages, and they're talking about Moria, and she's doing this, and I'm like, oh, okay, they're talking about Moria as a kid. And I'm like, no, that's not the name of her child. No, she doesn't have 3. Nope, that's not her husband's name. No, she did not die. And I'm like, and then you go to the next one, and that was when the brain kind of like melts, is whenever you see this little girl, creepy looking little girl and they're saying that she's known. It's not that she was special, that she learned how to do it. She was born knowing how to do it because she remembered knowing how to do it.
Yep.
So
that's when I was like, ooh, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Kind of creepy. So the second one I thought was a wasted life. She basically wants to go meet Charles Xavier. She jumps on a plane. The plane crashes. Bada boom, bada ding. She's dead. So the third one I find really interesting. I hate myself, therefore I hate mutants. So what did you think of that Moria?
That Moria was very interesting. It was, in a way, kind of like we were saying how taking a character and not really doing any detriment to any storyline of the X-Men or any history of X-Men, but using her to be part of certain history. Because if I'm not mistaken, they did do a story on the Cure, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, so having that letting it being her to create the Cure, I thought that was pretty interesting. I would have liked to see, I would have liked to see this story even play out more if it was like in an ongoing story in X-Men, to see how this would have panned out.
Okay.
But it was definitely interesting because you really did feel how, that what she was feeling, on her third life. She did not like the fact of dying, living a life, dying, coming back with the same memory, and really having no way of actually correcting some of the mistakes she did previously, because it's a whole new life now. So you can learn from what you did, but what are you going to do with it, basically?
And boy, did she get a life lesson in her third life.
Ooh, man, did she?
mean, she got that lesson was so hot, it was on fire.
Oh, she got lit.
Yes. it fried her brain, literally.
one would say she was on the hot seat.
Oh, yes. I mean, it couldn't have been any hotter. I mean, let's just say that she got literally burned to a crisp in one of the most brutal Marvel Comics deaths I think we've ever witnessed.
Oh, man, it was, oh, wow.
So the setup here is Destiny, Pyro, and Mystique try to stop Moria, who is very, not repentant. She's, basically saying, hey, I'm doing this. And it's interesting how they use Destiny to explain that reason per se, because of her powers. She basically, her mutantness, quote unquote, is hidden from everyone based on her powers that you can't detect her as a mutant. That's why no one has ever detected her as a mutant in all these years.
Her description was her being a void.
Yes.
Like a silhouette void in front of her. That's the best way to explain it.
But I love the checks and balances of Destiny saying, you and I are now linked. And if you try to kill me, I will know you're coming.
Know about it.
And if you don't do better, I will know about it and I will kill you again.
I'll kill you again. I was like, oh my God.
I think it is a little bit of poetic justice that it was in the 200s, I think, somewhere in Uncanny X-Men in the 200 range, but it was during the time that Moria McTaggart had developed her own temporary X-Men team to fight the Shadow King. But the Shadow King had taken over, I think it was Legion at the time, because Legion was comatose. And it is on Muir Island that Destiny is killed. So I think that it's just a little bit of irony there that Destiny meets her fate and dies on the same island with Moria McTaggart. I just wonder now, did Moria put that into motion as a revenge or something?
Possibly, maybe.
So we do see in life number 4 that she does repent, and the life she leads, she goes to Xavier, she falls in love with Xavier, and you basically see the entire history of the X-Men all the way to Future Past, Days of Future Past, to when she dies.
Mm-hmm.
Then we see in life number 5, she goes back 10 years, I believe, earlier, tells Charles about herself. He becomes more radicalized. We see that doesn't turn out well for them. Instead of the X-Men, he has, I think, Legion X, and they are much more militaristic than before.
Yep.
Interesting that life number 6 is missing. We don't know anything about. We skip from 5 to 7.
To 7, yeah.
And don't know. Yep. I'm thinking that's going to be a big revelation, but curious how you've got all these other lives. I'm curious to see how he's going to weave in this missing life that we don't know about.
It's going to be very interesting. It's going to be another jaw dropper for sure. It's something, I'm trying to say, like, it did seem like, okay, there's something that I did not catch, from the first issue and in here that clearly he kept out. That is something that is really going to be important later on this road. And seeing in issue 2 where he left out the sixth life, I think that life right there is going to really mean something on what is to happen later on. But I wanted to go back to where her third life, where she was face to face with Destiny, and she kind of redirected her with the whole with her powers, basically telling her what are you going to do with it? Are you going to continue to, I guess, buck the system, or are you going to try to help your people with this?
Right.
That question right there really set her on this mission where she is at now. I thought that was a pretty riveting question where she challenged her logic as, being a mutant right then and there. And then after just turning to ash after that. But yeah, I really want to know I'm really interested in what this sixth life really was. that's really going to bug me now, actually. No.
Well, but you know what? I think he has met his goal, because you and I are podcasters sitting here speculating, what is this sixth life? And what better way to say you did your purpose by us sitting here talking about speculation of what it might be. We're actually interested and trying to figure out what it might be.
Yep, he did. You won, Hickman. You won on this one.
So into 7, he presents a life where she is hunting down the Trask family, trying to eradicate the Sentinels completely. But of course, we see that they still exist. Life number 8 didn't last very long, because she went instead this time to Magneto and makes him even more Magneto than Magneto. And that didn't last and end very well. But the one that I find the creepiest is life number 9. She goes this time to Apocalypse.
Apocalypse. That was like straight out of left field. I was not expecting that at all. Like, because really, I mean, honestly, who do you really go to when you go to Xavier? You would think that would be the best route, and then that fails. And then you go to trying to handle on your own, be an assassin, which I thought that was kind of cool, or being an assassin. I thought that was kind of cool. And then that doesn't work out, because you find out that AI is something that man didn't make. It just found it, and it's pretty much inevitable. So, and then you try to go to Magneto. Definitely not exactly a good idea, not on his own, but then that ultimately failed. And then it's like, who do you go to? Like, who else, when all those options you had right there fail, who can you go to? And it's like, all that's left really is either Mr. Sinister or Apocalypse. And she chose Apocalypse.
Well, and I'm sorry, if I had to choose between, I'm going to one of the two, which two would I go to? I would go to Apocalypse. Because okay. Apocalypse is responsible in part for Sinister.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
If he had a hand in making Mr. Sinister, then let's go to the man behind the curtain who's running the whole show. Let's go to Apocalypse. So her 10th life is supposed to be her current life, meaning the life to which she marries Joe McTaggart. She has her son Kevin, who becomes Proteus, who then she eventually succumbs to the legacy virus, which we now know that she's not dead. She faked her own life. Faked her own death. Literally, she's faked her own life too, but she faked her own death. So I'm assuming that she's still out there. Here's my question to you. If this is her current life, how are things so different now?
See, that's what I was trying to figure out myself. Like, what was different in this life? Ugh. Because
here's my thing. The X-Men as we see them today are different from where we left them a couple of months ago. There's people who have recently died that are now back different than they were before. You have Warlock and you have Doug Ramsey, Cypher, and Warlock back together that we see, in House of X #1. And there's supposed to be other characters that we've seen die recently that are back from the dead. So my interesting thing with that is this maybe another life? And while you were talking, I had something pop in my head and I wanted to see what you think about it. So bear with me here. Okay. What if the secret life that we don't know about, life number 6, has been the X-Men continuity that we've known and all the reading years that we've read up till now? Life number 10 is the life that spawns the X-Men as we are seeing them with Genosha and with Xavier with the big helmet head and growing mutants and pods and whatever. What if that is life number 10 and we're seeing the things that changed after life number 6, which is the life we knew, not necessarily life number 10 that we're on. We're actually the missing life.
If you can see my head the top of my head just popped right off.
Kind of like mine melted, yours just kind of exploded.
Yeah, holy crap. That is, I would not doubt that from Hickman. If that was his route for Life 6 and that being the route for Life 10, that I would not shy away from that theory at all.
It kind of explain, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I could not wrap my head around so many changes, and I was trying to validate them and explain them and how they would happen. But if you look at it from the Moria perspective, so look at it. She had the X-Men normal history in life number 4. She marries Charles. Then she goes into life number 5, becomes radicalized, still with Charles. So maybe after that, she says, okay, happiness with Charles, that still didn't, even though I lived to an old age, it still wasn't what we wanted. I then went and tried to radicalize him. That didn't work. What if I try to just still show my love for Charles, but kind of back off and just be a support role? And then she gets pissed off after that doesn't work and she winds up dying. And then she says, okay, I'm going to go hunt the Trask family. That to me just makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. I like that theory, man. I really like that theory.
What is other than our lives and our theories? Oh, let me ask you this. What would be a theory that you would have as to something that might be going on?
Really, right now, I haven't really come up with any theories right now. Because I'm really curious on what's the route for, what's going on with Powers right now. My curiosity is really entangled with Life 6 and why it wasn't, put into issue 2. Hearing your theory does really make sense. I mean, as far as like that being his way of doing away of what, the old X-Men of old, and then using Life 10 to bring in a new vision of X-Men.
True.
Yeah, I really think that's that's really ultimately, that's really what X-Men really needs right now. It's just a new, like a little reboot, if you will, to make it, just to do away from all that convolutedness
and make it fresh again.
And make it fresh again. Yeah. Just make it fresh again.
I am for the first time in I don't know how long when am I actually excited and looking forward to an X-Men comic. And for that matter, there have been conversations that Clarence and I have had on this very show with me talking about how, unfortunately, I was getting tired of comic books, that they were like getting so repetitive and so corporate filled. This is the first time that I have been excited in I don't know how long, especially about a comic book that has an X title on it.
Well, let me ask you this. As far as like all-time favorite X-Men stories, where do you put this story now?
Okay, that's a hard one. So if I were to say one of my favorite X-Men stories actually was Fall of the Mutants. It was not an actual miniseries. It was a story that was told as a event within all the X-Men comic books. And it ended with the X-Men giving up their lives, going through this magical portal. Right before that, Storm got her powers back. When I started reading X-Men, I started reading at the episode or issue, I always call them episodes, but the issue where she lost her powers. And all these years that I'd been reading it, it was like, okay, when's she going to get her powers back? She finally got her powers back. That to me was majestic, wonderful, happy, so that was probably my favorite personal X-Men story. As far as great X-Men stories, I think they would have to be The Phoenix and then Days of Future Past. I am not a big fan of Grant Morrison's New X-Men, so I will not say that it will rank up there with that because me personally, it just wasn't my cup of tea, but I will rank it so far as a competitor to be placed in somewhere in the hierarchy of great X-Men moments. I don't want to say yet because I don't want to jinx myself and then be, dissatisfied with the ending.
Right.
But I will say that it has all the ingredients of something that will go down in history as a great X-Men story. I will give it, however, A+ on melt your brain moment, because it literally felt like I had to sit there and just kind of, wow, okay, let me read this again. And like I cannot tell you the last time I've done that.
He rewrote history, man. I was blown away by this. Never would I have thought, okay, Moira could be a mutant. That never really never would have crossed my mind. And to make that happen made it beautifully done. He did a great job. He didn't, like we said earlier, he didn't really try to detriment the history of X-Men. He basically just said, what if, basically.
Exactly. What if?
What if?
So I say, what if we come back in about 3 or 4 weeks from now and see if our minds have either exploded or melted, or if my theory is becoming to fruition. What do you think about that?
I think we should do that.
I think we should too. But in the meantime, we've talked several times about your podcast. So why don't we say for everyone listening, if anybody wanted to find the Extremely Geeked Out podcast, where would they go to find that?
Well, you can go to the main platform, which is Anchor, to listen to our podcast, but also it's distributed on Google Podcasts. It is also on SoundCloud. It's also on Overcast, pretty much essentially every. Also, Apple Podcast. Anywhere you name it, you'll find it there. But I will say, after the season is over with, it will no longer be on SoundCloud.
If anybody is listening and you're listening on our website at discussingcomics.com, just find the Extremely Geeked Out image on the side by the episodes and click on that, and it will take you directly to, I believe, the Anchor page. So
yes,
please, check that out. And for everyone listening, we want to know what you think of House of X, Powers of X, and how can you let us know? Go to Facebook, go to groups, look up Discussing Network, and we've already got a post in there and we've already got comments. So let us know, did it blow your mind? Are you excited? Are you not excited? And if you're not excited, hey, that's great. Let us know why. Again, thank you everyone for listening. Ron, always a pleasure to have you. I can't wait to see what we think in about 3 weeks as to how this series is progressing. So,
oh yes.
Again, thanks. And for everyone listening, we will be back next time.
See you later,
You've
guys.
been listening to the Discussing Network. Find out more at discussingnetwork.com.